Hello everyone. Today the topic of my lecture is caste as an important determinant of voting behavior in India. As we all know, caste is an important category of not only a political category, also social category, economic category, and also a category of influencing voting behaviors in India. So today what we will do largely the lecture would be roughly around to map the role of caste in Indian politics, to understand the caste and how it influenced the voting pattern in India, to understand the complex nature of caste and voting behavior, the relationship between caste and elections and the caste, vice versa, to understand the new contours of caste politics in India. Well, there has been a lot of research, plethora of books on caste politics, but there are new research coming up to understand the linkages between the caste and politics, caste and voting behavior, and so on and so forth. Well, what is caste and caste system is a very well known to many of us, those who are doing courses on sociology, politics, or anthropology. Caste is basically a form of social order based on practices and concept of graded inequality. Caste operations, hierarchies, a process of exclusions. These are the matters or factors which are part of the process of studying caste. There has been a lot of definitions given by sociologists or anthropologists. We won't be dealing much with those definitions. Here we will be engaging with the definitions which basically we can use the definitions in the realm of electoral politics or influencing the voting behavior. As Dr. Ambedkar is influential text, in his influential text, which is called the Annihilation of Caste, and in that text he is basically said caste is not only the division of labours but also division of labourers. Here the definition is quite important. Generally we understand caste from a basic purity pollution's point of view, but here in elections one has to go beyond that old definitions. Therefore, it's not only about the purity and pollutions. Caste also influence economy, caste influence the everyday lives, caste influence democratic institutions, caste influence overall democratic public culture. Caste as a system is arranged in such a fashion that it's not only maintain the traditional caste based hierarchical privileges and oppressions, but also take shapes or adapt itself in a different social atmosphere. Also it contaminate or its impact or its reflect or influence the democratic values of functioning of caste in India. Well, what we will do today, that how this system operates in India, how caste system plays important role as far as elections is concerned, and how it's changing the changing contours and changing patterns of caste system in India. Until recently, the scholarships on caste has largely been on anthropological or sociological work. Presently, in the last few decades, we notice the broadening horizons of understanding or exploring caste and its impact on other aspects of human lives and the socio-political and economic democratic institutions. A scholar like Professor Sukhdev Thorat, Barbara Harris White, Sumit Maskar, they have done phenomenal scholarly work by linking caste questions with the labour market, economic growth and regulated economy. Caste and the new questions. What are the new questions and how caste group do interact and engage with the elections and political parties? What are the major determining factors while casting votes? Do all caste group vote homogeneously? In order to answer these complex and layered questions, one has to academically engage with interdisciplinary theoretical tools and empirical evidences for voting and elections. Caste and political assertions. History of caste based mobilizations in India. In the pre-independence era also we have seen the rise of Dravidian politics, or in South India, in North India, in West India, like the Phule, then later on Ambedkar, Periyar in Tamil Nadu. We see different histories of during the time of colonial times and also in post-colonial India. We see a different kind of caste based assertions and mobilizations. In the post-colonial India's parliamentary democracy has experienced three democratic upsurge. The first democratic upsurge, which is between 1950 and 1970, is basically right after the independence, with an independent constitutions, with elections commissions, with universal adult franchises, voting rights for all. This has basically created a common sphere where we see popular mass participation in the political process. This process is called first democratic upsurge. And the second democratic upsurge, the term coined by Professor Yogendra Yadav, and this second democratic upsurge started in the 1980s onwards. And with this second democratic upsurge, we see the SC, ST, OBC or the Dalit, Adivasis and other socially educationally marginalized group, they are becoming part of political debates. That is called second democratic upsurge. And then there is a third democratic upsurge in the post-liberalizations and globalization phase. So, these three democratic upsurge is important to understand the politics of caste. Therefore, we have to locate caste or caste influence in the context. In 1980s onwards, after the second democratic upsurge, 1980 onwards, also with the Mandal Commission's report, with the Mandal politics, this emergence of new politics of social justice and representation among the OBC groups, rise of Bahujan Samaj Party, the rise of Samajwadi Party, the rise of RJD, these are the political party which based on the idea of representation, social justice, Bhagidari, the concept of Bhagidari. The famous slogan of Kasiram, who was also the founder of Bahujan Samaj Party, and his famous slogan called Jiska Jitna Sankhya Bhari, Uski Utni Bhagidari, representations according to the populations. So, this has captured the larger what he called Dalit Bahujan populations in India, especially in the northern part of India, North India, but it has larger repercussions in other Indian states as well. The anti-caste movement peaked during the post-Mandal phase and also witnessed massive electoral and political mobilizations of Dalits and other social backward communities. In Indian politics is witnessing further democratizations or fragmentations based on caste-based solidarity, is no more on the caste block, but also it gone to the sub-caste level. If you take example of Uttar Pradesh for the case of Samajwadi Party. Samajwadi Party, though it's an OBC centric party, but is again largely dominated by one singular caste called the Yadav caste. On the other hand, the Patels and Kurmis are not much with the Samajwadi Party. Therefore, we have to understand the heterogeneity within the backward class or backward caste groups. Same way in Bahujan Samaj Party, though it has generated a huge debate and kind of an larger captured the imaginations of Bahujan community, but the two major subcaste within the Dalits or within scheduled caste, one is the Jatavs and another one is Chamar. These two subcaste dominates the Bahujan Samaj Party in India. Therefore, we see a new kind of subcaste politics also in different parts of India. The new political categories, the new political parties are being formed on the basis of different subcaste or jatis. It's no longer only the schedule, like the scheduled caste federation in what Ambedkar started. It's not only about the whole homogeneous monolithic political party of any Adivasi group or any OBC group. Therefore, there are different layers within that caste clusters. A new modes of caste-based electoral mobilizations in different states dismantle the old multiple caste and community-based political alliances and configurations. As Professor Christophe Jaffelo in his famous book called India's Silent Revolutions. The Indian Silent Revolutions is a widely acclaimed book, and in that book Jaffelo argued since 1960s a new assertive has characterized this formerly silent majority. The lower caste, mostly Dalits and OBC, constitute more than 2/3 of Indian populations. Therefore, its growing political consciousness was first manifested by Chaudhry Charan Singh efforts to build a larger peasant movement or agrarian movement from the low caste, and the later V.P. Singh articulated in the late 1980s, in the early 1990s with the arrival of Mandal politics, with the arrival of Mandal commissions. Jaffelo further argued that this trend of active political participation is an important element of genuine democratizations of India, and the socio-economic efforts of this silent revolution is bound to generate a new socio-economic and political mobility among the lower caste. So, hence if we look at at the socio-economic mobility of lower caste group with the OBC reservation, with the scheduled caste reservation, new sections have emerged within the subalterns or within the OBC and Dalit group. Those groups are mobile. Those groups are economically mobile as well as socially mobile, and this has generated a new kind of political discourses, new kind of political debates, and that debates we really have to take it seriously in order to understand the contemporary political discourse. We also have to revisit the old political alignments or old political alliances. The caste alliances like Ajgar theory, AJGAR, Ajgar, which is Ahir, Jat, Gujjar and Rajput caste, is an amalgamation of 3 castes, and how the Ajgar theory, the Ajgar political alliance is played a significant role during 1970s under the leadership of Chaudhary Charan Singh as a part of Kisan Andolan or farmers movement. Subsequently, in Uttar Pradesh, in Bihar, the so-called MY formula, what you call Muslim Yadav formula, also played a quite substantive role as far as Samajwadi Party and RJD led by Lalu Prasad Yadav is concerned. This has, though it has worked for a certain period of time, but why no longer these categories are not working anymore, that we need to retrospect. Again, the political alliance like KHAM, K-H-A-M, KHAM, which is an important electoral coalition in Gujarat in 1970s, early 80s, and which played a substantial role as far as the electoral victory of Indian National Congress is concerned. The KHAM model, which is consist of Kshatriya, K stand for Kshatriya, H stand for Harijan, Adivasis, A for Adivasis and M for Muslim. The Kshatriya, Harijan, Adivasi Muslim alliance, which is abbreviated as KHAM, and this KHAM alliance did play a role as far as the election victory of Congress is concerned. In the simple reason, Nikita Sood, a noted scholars on Gujarat politics, and in her book, she is arguing that is a simple reason behind the KHAM coalitions was to target the Kshatriya group, which constitute 40% of populations in the state, and then Harijans, which constitute around 7%, the Adivasis constitute 14%, and the Muslim, which constitute roughly around 8.3%, which totally, if you take all this percentage, that is close to 69% of populations fall under this category called KHAM, and which also paved the way of backward class commissions, which is called Bakshi Commission in Gujarat, and they started recognizing OBC caste. Therefore, in the post KHAM alliances in the contemporary Gujarat, we see those models are no longer working anymore, and why that is those models, those electoral alliance are not working, that we really need to introspect. Another very popular influential book by Professor Kanchan Chandra, and she argued in her book why ethnic parties succeed, patronage and ethnic head counts in India, and this book explored the study of the variation on performance of 4 ethnic parties in India, and this book argue and develop a theory of ethnic performance which she calls a patronage democracy, a family of democracy mark patterns of political behavior as well as new interpretations of democracy in India. And Professor Kanchan argues the voter in a patronage democracy choose between parties and conducting ethnic head counts rather than comparing policy platform or ideological positions. This is an important shift. It's no longer the traditional sort of a Congress system. It's like new party which based on a sort of caste, which based on ethnicity, and people are choosing between this party not on the basis of ideological positions only, or not only basis of the policy platforms, rather they are choosing because that party represent his or her caste. And then after that we see in the contemporary era, we see fragmentation of caste. Caste is no longer working as a block that they used to work in 80s and 90s. The electoral alliances among the Dalits often generally treats as an homogeneous, monolithic, without segregating the demographic details and interstate variations. So there is nothing like a homogeneous OBC politics or homogeneous Dalit politics or homogeneous minority politics. Here there are layers within that, there are heterogeneity within that. On the there are interstate variations, there are intra-state variations. While analyzing the data of CSDS, Center for Studies of Developing Society, on National Election Survey in 2009, The voting patterns among the Dalit community across the country indicates that Dalit vote is not homogeneously favorable to any one particular political outfit. Instead, that Dalit vote is determined by the nature and dynamics of political party system in constituencies of the most of the Indian states. Therefore, we see for a brief period of time, we in the post Mandal phases we see some kind of an amalgamation of different groups, but later stage we see the fragmentations, the differences, the emergence of different subcaste politics, and it started influencing or impacting the electoral behavior of a large number of electorates. Then caste and voting patterns in post 2014, and in post 2014 India, we see a complete shift of caste based voting, unlike 80s and 90s, with the rise of BJP, with the rise of Narendra Modi, which dismantled the rise of Modi or rise of BJP has basically dismantled the old caste class equations and solidarity. The new form of majoritarian pan Indian solidarity emerged with a mixture of caste, jati, Hindutva nationalism and other larger under the larger rubric or larger theme of development, which is an aspirational category for many upward mobile classes and caste. BJP could successfully able to convince the large upward mobile aspiring electorates that the party is above caste, beyond dynasty, beyond identity politics. If you look it carefully, with a careful observation of data, though BJP position itself as a party which above caste, above sort of an ethnicity or above religion, but here if you minutely look, they also very consciously look at the sort of caste configurations of that very particular constituencies of the social space. They at the time of giving candidates, at the time of selecting candidates, they all those parties, almost all political parties including BJP, they do the social engineering process, and in that they understand what to give tickets to which community. So therefore, it is not that caste has erased or caste politics have vanished, rather it has taken a different shape. Caste in 2019 Lok Sabha elections. This is also an important, interesting sort of examples or analogy. While analyzing the role of caste in 2019 Lok Sabha elections, Christophe Jaffelo has argued that in 2019 the electoral behavior of Indians still has a basis in their caste background, though new variables like class has increasingly playing a defining role. The increasing importance of this class element did not mean that caste politics has disappeared. In fact, the caste remained very strong at the jati level, not at the big level, but at the jati level, sub-caste level. The only relevant, which is jati, is the one of the important relevant unit of analysis between class, caste and the elections. The larger cluster of upper caste, OBC, Dalit, where we have considered so far has always been heterogeneous, their voting patterns rather diverse, except a brief moment unity in the wake of Mandal politics in 1990s. Then there is a slight decline of caste-based mobilizations. In the last few decades, we see there is a slight decline. Jaffelo did mention about the emergence of new middle class out of globalizations, privatizations, new economic reforms, new avenues of economic avenues and opportunities. In this process, a new middle class has emerged, but the erosion and the influence of caste politics did happen, but for the two reasons. He identified two major reasons for the little decline or erosion of caste quotient in India. First is that the potentiality of caste-based mobilizations has lost its momentum because the pro-Mandal quota politics or issue of reservation have reached the saturation point. If you look at the reservation cap, the Supreme Court has given cap of 50% reservation. Therefore, reservation cannot exceed beyond 50%. That is set given by as per the Supreme Court verdict. Therefore, in the last 1.5 decades, the reservation politics or politics of positive discrimination has reached its limits. Though we see a new emergence of different groups like Maratha in Maharashtra or Jats in Western UP and in Haryana, Patels and Patidars in Gujarat. We see a new dominant who was otherwise dominant. There are new groups coming up. They are leading agitations and seeking for reservation. That is a different issues and debates. Secondly, the two other variables for the decline of caste questions or caste in India, caste and politics in India, was the category of religion and class has gained momentum over the last decades. This is an interesting observation. The rise of what you call BJP or Hindu nationalism has blurred the identity, other social identity, social markers, and invited all members of majority community to be the Hindu first and the caste is secondary. Here it is not that caste is erasing, caste is becoming a secondary options for many electorates. Therefore, due to these two basic reasons, Christophe Jaffelo argues that there is a slight decline of caste questions in India, but it is not erosion or it is not that eradicated. Caste questions and the neoliberal market economy. With the neoliberal market economy due to rampant urbanizations, with the rampant privatizations and opening of new economic opportunity for sections of people including dominant middle class and few other backward class have gained economic mobility. And this rampant urbanizations and this entire process of privatizations, this has also helped a small size community which basically they become a new middle class in the last few decades. The large number of new middle class and caste groups have supported the BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party in 2014 as well as in 2019 parliamentary elections. According to Lokniti and CSDS survey, the post poll survey, national survey in 2014, the proportion of BJP voters among the OBC belonging to the intermediate social category in terms of class jumped by 14% to reach 37%, whereas only 28% of poor OBC supported the party. Class differentiations, the impact of class variations within the caste cluster is also significant among the upper caste. That means while only 37% of upper caste of the poor upper caste supported BJP. So it's like in 2014 it's 12% increase from 2009 and 55% of reach belonging to this group did vote for the BJP. So that's why with the BJP, with the rise of BJP, it's also the combinations of both sort of class and also the category of religion. So therefore, it will be too general to argue that all people vote uniformly. There are different patterns, different voting patterns according to the local socio-political spaces. Well, the rise of BJP and the Dalit Bahujan perspective. This is an important critical part. Mr. Dilip Mandal, a senior journalist and an activist, in his popular article just after the 2019 Lok Sabha elections, critically examined and raised multiple questions about the projection of marginalized group, mainly Dalit and backward caste. These groups generally in the public domain, in academia, in media, in public domain, generally people argue the rise of BJP is due to the Dalits and backward class votes. These groups are basically held responsible for the return of BJP in 2019. He argued that India's so-called left, liberal, secular political analysts and academia have been blaming the lower and backward caste for bringing BJP back to power. He further argued that the analysts appeared to have deliberately sidestepped the fact that it is the upper caste that predominantly voted for the BJP. But for the liberals, the burden of defeating BJP is on the shoulder of the marginalized group. The upper caste are free from all scrutiny. He used the survey of Lokniti survey of CSDS in Uttar Pradesh, in the state of Uttar Pradesh, which is a big state which basically influenced the national voting patterns all across India. In Uttar Pradesh, 82% of Brahmins and 89% of Thakurs, 70% of Vaishnav voted for BJP. As per India Today, My Axis post-poll survey, 77% people of general caste largely upper caste in Uttar Pradesh voted for BJP. Therefore, in Bihar also it was 73% general caste or general category voters voted for BJP. Overall 61% general category caste in India voted for the BJP. Entire blame to the Dalit Bahujan marginalized group, that because of this group BJP came to power. This is not correct. That is what Dilip Mandal has argued. Caste still is a relevant and influencing category as far as influencing the voting pattern is concerned, but its caste plus something else is required to mobilize. It's no longer at the time of 60s, 70s, 80s or maybe 90s, there you could mobilize a caste group basis on one single identity, whether it is Dalit identity or any other caste identity, but in the present day, with the competitive electoral politics, with the rise of first past the post system, with the electoral competitions, we see there has been a declining of sort of an caste based mobilizations, not because caste has vanished, because elections has become a very competitive process. Because of rise of different jatis within a caste clusters, there are different class divisions within the class cluster. According to social mobility, according to economic mobility, their vote, the influence matters. With the rise of competitive electoral democracy under the first past the post system, it is the compulsions for the political parties to engage beyond their own caste in order to win elections. One has to engage with the broader political category. Therefore, one single category is not sufficient enough to understand the voting patterns, or to understand the psephology, to understand the process of elections. Therefore, in order to map the caste questions, in order to map the role of caste or influence of caste in Indian politics or caste in elections, one has to engage differently. One has to engage the sociological aspect, one has to engage the economic aspect, one has to engage the subcaste, the issues of subcaste. Therefore, because of democratizations within the Bahujan, Dalit Bahujan groups also lead to a different kind of caste questions within. Therefore, to conclude that in order to understand the influence of caste in politics, in order to understand the influence of caste as an important determinants of voting behavior, which is correct that caste does play an important role, caste does shape the mind, does shape the political patterns, political behavior, but it is not the caste as in single unit. There are other factors, other variables, other aspect which matters a lot. And then to conclude that it is not an homogeneous caste politics. There within caste, and when I am talking about caste, it is no longer I am talking only about the SC, it is not only about the ST or OBC. It is a caste as a caste as an unit. Brahmin is also in caste, Kshatriya is also in caste unit. So within that, there are different sub-caste politics has emerged. A new political category has emerged. For example, in Bihar, you see the category extremely backward caste, or in Andhra Pradesh Mala Madhika, in Uttar Pradesh there are other different subcastes. So, a new kind of subcaste politics has emerged in order to emerge. Therefore, in order to understand the role of caste or in order to understand electoral behavior, one has to look beyond caste as an homogeneous monolithic identity.